Where did the bigger pairs come from? What was like Rick? Motherfucking dude.
What's up, you sick mother bluffers? In this one, I'm headed to the River Poker and Sports Bar in downtown Portland for a cash game session. It's going to be a lot of action, so let's get right into it. You know, heading into the session, I was thinking, man, it's been a while since I've seen aces. And guess what? A couple of hands after I sit down, here they are. Goddamn, what a sexy hand. So in this one, action folds to the cutoff, who opens to 7. I look down at pocket aces in the small blind, and I 3-bet to 20. I could have gone larger, but we're only 5-handed early in the session, so I think 20 works fine in this spot. The big blind cold calls the 3-bet, and the initial raiser makes the call as well. We're going 3 ways to a flop, a 5 deuce 3 2 hearts. Both players check to me. I do want to charge any flush draws, so I continue for 40. The big blind calls, and the cutoff folds. We're going heads up to the turn, which comes to 5 of spades, pairing, and putting a second flush draw on the board. Big blind checks for a second time. I bet again for 100. The big blind goes all in for 109. Totally did not pay attention to their stack. I obviously make the call. They ask how big is my pair. I tell them it's the biggest. River comes to queen of spades. Aces are good, and I take down a very nice pot within minutes of sitting down. 2 hands later, there's a button straddle on, and I pick up pocket 8s in the hijack. Small blind calls, under the gun calls. I call. Before the cutoff, min raises to 10. Button straddler calls, small blind calls, under the gun calls. I put on my hard hat, let's go set mining. I make the call. I don't know about you, but if there's a hand I seem to flop a lot of sets with, it's pocket 8s. And this time is no exception, as the flop comes 4, 8, 6, 2 hearts. Damn, dude, I've been sitting at this table for 10 minutes, and I already stacked someone with aces and flop top set? What a dream start to this session. Back to the hand, action checks to me. I might have only been here 10 minutes, but based on my observations so far, I am confident the cutoff is going to c-bet, so I decide to go for a sneaky check. Fuck, he snap checks. Thankfully, it's the button who decides to reach for chips and bet 20. The small blind calls, undergun folds, and I check raise to 60. Cutoff folds, the button calls, nice. And now the small blind, who initially checked, then flat called the button's bet, rips it in for 163. I obviously make the call, and I watch in blissful disbelief as the button snippety snaps for 113. We're headed to a turn to end river in a 3-way all-in with close to 500 in the middle. Looks like I need to dodge some hearts. Turn comes the 7 of spades, nice, and the river is the ace of clubs, let's go. I announce my set, the button shows sorry, 5-3 offsuit for a flopped straight draw that drilled the turn, so they're going to take down the main pot. The small blind mucks their hand, so I'm going to take down the side pot, but instead of winning close to $500, I only end up losing 70. Brutal. There are no bomb pots in this game, however, after each hold'em hand, the player on the button can decide to play a lockout for any amount between 10 and $50. If you're not familiar with lockouts, the button decides how much to play for, usually 10 or 15, but there's the occasional $25 or $50 lockout. Each player gets dealt 5 cards, as we're playing 5-card No Limit Omaha. After they look at their cards, they decide if they want to play the hand by calling, and then the button has the option of checking or raising. If they do raise, that reopens the action for other players to re-raise, but to be honest, I haven't seen that happen very often. Anyway, in this one, we're playing a $15 lockout. I'm in the low jack, and I get dealt ace, queen, 10, 7 deuce, a nice hand that's got nut flush and nut straight potential. I make the call. 3 other players make the call, and the button checks their option. We're going 5 ways to a flop. Of queen, jack, 9, 2 diamonds, a great flop for me as I flop the nut flush draw and an up and down straight draw. I also pair up my queen, but that alone won't be good by the river. Action checks to me. I'm just going to check for now, and action checks around. The turn comes a deuce, giving me 2 pair, queens and deuces, to go along with my draws. On this card, the big blind leads for 30. I make the call, and the button comes along as well. We're going 3 ways to the river, which comes the 3 of diamonds, giving me the nuts. Big blind checks this time. I'm not very hopeful I'll get called, but I bet 100, and sadly both players make the fold. Still, I pick up a nice pot. Here's another lockout. In this one, I'm on the button with ace, king, queen, 7 deuce. Again, a hand with nut flush and straight potential. 5 players call for 10 and I check my option. We go 6 ways to a flop of 9, 5, 8, 2 clubs, once again flopping the nut flush draw. Action's on the small blind and they decide to rip it in for 75 bucks. Under the gun calls, and I'm happy to gamble it up here and make the call as well. 3 ways to the turn, which comes the 7 of clubs. I turn the second nut flush as there is a possible straight flush on the board. Under gun checks, I desperately try to extract some value from my hand and bet 100, but sadly the snap pulled. I'm going heads up against the all-in small blind player. Let's see a clean river. It's the 3 of clubs, which does open up another straight flush, but my opponent shows 2 5s for a flop set. It's no good though, and I take down the pot. This is another 10 bucks lockout where I make the call for middle position with ace, king, jack, 7 5. 3 other players make the call and the button checks, so we go 5 ways to the flop. I once again have a hand with nut flush and straight potential, but you know what? How about flopping a boat? That's right. The flop comes 5, 5, king, 2 clubs, giving me 5s over kings, a strong but vulnerable hand, as any player holding a pair bigger than a 6 could turn or river a bigger boat. So when action checks to me, I can't afford to slow play this hand. Hopefully I can get some value from a flush draw. I bet on the smaller side 20, but sadly everybody folds. I take down a small pot, but my lockout run good continues. Let's go back to the hold'em streets, and this one action folds to the short stack cutoff who open shoves for 42 bucks before I look down at ace 10 suited on the button. Typically, ace 10 does not perform very well in this spot. It's basically a flip at best, but I'm getting the sense that the cutoff is shoving on the wider side, so I'm happy to make the call and gamble it up, and the big blind is going to come along as well. We go 3 ways to a flop of 7 5 7 rainbow. Big blind checks. With no side pot to play for, there's no point in betting. I check back. Turn comes the king of spades, on which we both check again, and the river comes the 10 of spades. Big blind checks for a 3rd time, and since there is no side pot to play for, I don't think I'm getting called by worse, so I just check back, and my pair of 10s is good. Nice. Here's another $10 lockout. I'm on the button with ace 7 7 4 4 with the nut club draw. We've got a family pot brewing as everybody makes the call. We're going 8 ways to a flop of ace jack 3 2 clubs. I flop the nut flush draw. Action checks to the low jack who bets 15. The cutoff calls. I call. Small blind calls, and the rest of the table folds. 4 ways to the turn, which comes the 9 of clubs. I turn the nuts. Action checks to the low jack, and they don't seem fazed by the flush on the board. They bet again for 20. Even better, the cutoff calls. I have to charge them more, so after the small blind folds out of turn, I raise to 80, which in theory is a little bit too small, but in the end, I do get quite a bit of value as the low jack puts their last 46 bucks in, and the cutoff makes the call. We're going 3 ways to the river. Don't pair the board dealer. It's a brick deuce of spades, perfect. The cutoff checks. I'm not sure if I can extract more value from them at this point, but I have to try. I bet 100 in this snap fold. I show the nuts. They're obviously good. Looking back on this hand, I think my turn raise should have been larger to try and extract max value from my opponents before they bricked out on the river. Still, another pot coming my way. I'll take it. Back to hold'em, the button straddle is on. Small blind, big blind, and under the gun make the call. It folds to me in the hijack, and I look down at pocket aces, yes. I raise to 25, which is too small. After 3 players already called the straddle, I should probably make it closer to 40. The cutoff and button are going to make the call, so unsurprisingly, that invites the small blind and big blind into the pot. Only under the gun is going to make the fold. We're going 5 ways. Shit. 5 ways to the flop, which comes 8 queen 7 2 diamonds, and the blinds check to me. I'm obviously going to c-bet, but I'm having a hard time deciding on what amount to bet. I want to protect against the flush draws, but with the ace of diamonds in my hand and 2 diamonds, including the queen on the board, I feel like that limits the combos of suited diamond hands my opponents could have. Also, I don't want to bet too big and overcommit with just a pair in a 5-way pot. In my mind, I want to target and possibly get multiple streets of value from a hand like king queen or queen jack, maybe even queen 10, so I decide to bet 60. The cutoff folds, but the button raises to 180. Action falls back to me, and I'm really hating this spot. Based on the little bit of information I have on this player, I don't think they're overplaying top pair. They could definitely be bluffing with some sort of straight and flush draw combo. I also know they know I'm, for the most part, a pretty tight player, definitely on the tighter end in this lineup. So without trying to level myself too much, I think it's very possible they're putting me on ace queen or better, and they're going for max value with a hand like pocket sevens or pocket eights that flop the set. Also, they've got like 250 behind, which makes calling seem like an even worse option. I think in this spot, I either have to go all in or fold. After thinking about it for a little while, I end up deciding on a fold. Always sucks to lose a pot with the best starting hand in poker. I asked my opponent about it later. They claimed to have flopped 2-pair with 8-7. Nice hand to them. I hit my first roadblock in what has been a pretty smooth session so far. I definitely made this hand harder to navigate by raising too small pre-flop. On to the next one. Last hand of the vlog, it's another lockout. I'm in middle position with, once again, a hand with nut flush and straight potential. Ace queen jack 4-3 double suited. I call for 15, two other players call, and the button checks. We go full ways to a flop of ace deuce 5. I flop an open-ended straight draw. Action is going to check around. The turn comes the 10 of hearts. I pick up an additional straight draw. Action checks around to the button who bets 25. It folds to me. I'm getting the right price to see a river, so I make the call. Heads up to the river, which comes the 6 of diamonds, giving me the second nut straight, only losing to 9-7. I think my hand is disguised enough that my opponent might fire again if I check, so I go for a bit of deception and check, but sadly, they don't take the bait and snap check back. I think they either flopped or turned a set, but my straight is going to take down the pot. That's it for this one. I bought in for 300, peaked very close to 1,000, but ended up cashing out for 800, booking a profit of 500 bucks. Definitely ran good in the lockouts, turning or rivering the nuts like it was nothing. Overall, a very fun session, and I want to give a shout out to the people that run the game. Dealers were great, super comfortable, high-end gaming chairs. So that, combined with the great action, means I definitely recommend you check out this game, and maybe I'll see you there. Thank you so much for watching, good luck at the tables, and I'll catch you in the next one.